Am I in the wrong channel?
Can you hear me? Hello?
I thought I have
I can hear you.
main audio done. You're so weak. Your voice, I mean, is weak. Can you say something?
Is it?
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah, let me check my audio settings.
I can hear you, Venerable.
It's coming, it's coming.
Microphone, I'm turning it all the way up. My microphone.
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Here it's quite weak, I have to say. Or maybe it's me. No?
It's because of the war in Ukraine. Turn down the volume. We need to turn down the volume all over the world. Sit in silence for a while and have some peace. God, it's fighting.
Yes.
But can you hear me, Pamela?
Yes.
Yes, Venerable, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Venerable Ciliana, can you hear?
It was my volume.
Okay. Maybe you have to put your hearing aids in. I don't know.
Well, I heard Venerable Ciliana loud and clear.
Oh, yeah? Okay, good. That's probably better. More useful.
No, it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I need to prepare a little bit more.
Sure.
I need to open up.
Yep.
I'm going to use a PowerPoint slide today.
Woof.
So
Oh, yeah.
Find it, yeah.
Exciting.
Okay, Kunben, I'm ready to start whenever you are.
Yep. Welcome, everybody. For some of you, welcome back, since we had already a session this morning. For many of you, welcome to the eighth day of miracle. So we are halfway through this is how time passes quickly. And welcome, Venerable Sayana, for translating into Italian today. And yes, so today we welcome Venerable Letsok, who is usually based in Sara Monastery in South India. So Sara Monastery is near Bangalore, kind of near. And he is currently joining us from Italy. So for the Europeans, he is in the same time zone. For India, he's a little bit behind. So Venerable Letsok has joined the Geshe study program at Sara Monastery, I think in 2004. Is that correct? Yes, and he is almost done, reached his goal. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, almost a Geshe. So amazing, amazing, amazing. And we're so happy to have Venerable Letsok with us again. And today, Venerable Letsok will talk about emptiness. So verses on emptiness from the King of Concentration Sutras. And I've heard already that he yes, has prepared a little PowerPoint presentation. So we're very curious. Thank you so much, Venerable Letsok, for making the time. We know you're very, very busy right now. Yeah, and welcome to Tushita again. Great to have you.
Thank you, Kunben and Tamala. Yeah, I'm happy to be back with Tushita again online. And yeah, I see some old friends here. So yeah, happy to be with you all again. Yeah, so this is a very auspicious occasion for the Days of Miracles. I'm very glad Tushita organized this program to yeah, share some of the Buddhist teachings with each other during this time and together create some merit and remember some of what the Buddha taught during this auspicious time. So yeah, that's why I chose to go through some words of a sutra, because oftentimes I think, yeah, we you know, we look at lots of different texts by later Indian pundits and by Tibetan scholars and practitioners, but often we don't look at the words of actual sutras that much. For many of us, I know for myself, it's the case. So it's really good, especially on the 4 holy days during the year. What is it, Sakadawa and the wheel turning day, descent from heaven, and then during the days of miracles, when we remember sort of some of the most significant deeds of the Buddha, to actually look at the words of the Buddha that the Buddha taught directly in sutras and yeah, contemplate them. So that's why I chose this, the King of Concentrations Sutra, some verses from that to look at today. But before we begin, let's just kind of collect our attention and then generate a positive motivation, and then can recite the Buddha's name mantra and 1 verse of praise to the Buddha as a way of going for refuge. So let's just sit quietly for a few moments to focus our minds. And then it's good if you can visualize yourself surrounded by all sentient beings. And in fact, we are all interconnected with countless other sentient beings who fall in these 3 categories of friends, those whom we naturally like, and then enemies, those whom we tend to dislike and more prone to become angry at, and then those whom we have a neutral attitude towards. So visualize these 3 classes of sentient beings surrounding you. And remember how they're the same as us in wishing to have happiness and wishing to be free from suffering. And then on that basis, try to generate virtuous motivation. If you can, a bodhicitta motivation. And then in order to help us actually accomplish the aim of our motivation to achieve the state of full enlightenment, in order to achieve the welfare of all sentient beings, then we can invoke the blessings of the Buddha Dharma Sangha as symbolized by Shakyamuni Buddha. So if you like, you can visualize Shakyamuni Buddha or other objects of the field of refuge in the space before you. So I'd like to just recite this one verse of praise that oftentimes His Holiness Dalai Lama opens with, a verse of praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. Hangi Tukshe Nerzunde Dawa Tamje Bambe Chair, Umbe Deni Dunjeba, Gautam Dela Chad Lo. So to you whom compelled by great compassion, in order to dispel all wrong views, taught the Holy Dharma, to Gautama Buddha, I prostrate. And then we can recite Buddha's name mantra 3 times as a way of going for refuge and honoring the Buddha and invoking the Buddha's blessing. Okay, so thank you all. So I hope I have the power to share my screen. Check, I do, awesome. All right, so before I share it though, so I'm going to share my screen for most of the talk. Actually, there's about, I took about maybe 12 verses from the King of Concentration Sutra to look at today. So they are from the 39th chapter of the King of Concentration Sutra. The King of Concentration Sutra, maybe first just to say a word about it. Oh, first of all, Kunben, how long do I have? I know we're starting very late in India. It's 9 o'clock, and I understand most sessions go for about 3 hours. So we go to midnight or what?
1.5 hours. We are
Okay.
humble.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I thought so. So in this session, then I thought I want to read through these verses twice. Once just a little bit slowly, and I'll just make some comments on the meaning of different lines. And then we'll read through again, and then spend some time meditating on the verses, and then conclude. Okay, so these verses are from the King of Concentrations Sutra, which is a Mahayana Sutra. I believe it belongs to the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the emptiness, the meaning of emptiness, the final meaning of emptiness, the final intent of the Buddha is taught directly. And it's a Mahayana Sutra, so it's taught in Sanskrit, ostensibly. And it's very, one of the most widely quoted sutras in the Tibetan tradition. You see it extensively quoted in the great treatise on the stages of the path by Tsongkhapa, the Lamrim Chenmo, especially in the sections on emptiness and the sections on concentration, how to meditate. But it also emphasizes a lot within the view of emptiness, the importance of protecting one's karma, right? Not engaging in non-virtuous actions and engaging in virtuous actions. And it also speaks a lot about, well, the activities of bodhisattvas in general, but especially of the fully ordained bodhisattvas, fully ordained monks and nuns who are practicing the bodhisattva path and how they should behave. It's a very long sutra, so it's about this. So the translation I'm using is from the 84,000 project. So this project, headed by what is his name? I should remember. Zonzi Khyentse Rinpoche, yeah, headed by Zonzi Khyentse Rinpoche.
Venerable.Letsok.
Yeah, speak loud.
Your sound is coming in and out. I think when you lean back and maybe although you have the headset on. Yeah.
I need to lean
I'm
forward.
not sure, but
okay. I'll try to speak louder. If you can't hear me for whatever reason, please let me know. Anyway, so they're translating a lot of sutras. So this sutra is translated as one of the sutras in that project. It's about 500 pages long. The one we're using has 40 verses, and the verses 40 chapters. Sorry, it has 40 chapters. The verses I've taken from the 39th chapter, which is the chapter on. Well, let me share the PowerPoint to make sure I get it right now. And I have to go down here and do this. Should look good. Okay. It's the chapter. I'll write it down. Anyway, it's the chapter on the restraint of body, speech, and mind. So I've taken some verses on the restraint of mind from the King of Samadhi Sutra or the King of Concentration Sutra. So here in Sanskrit, it's called the Samadhi Raja Sutra. Samadhi means concentration, Raja means king, Sutra means sutra. In Tibetan, it's called the Tenzin Gyalpo Do. It's translated in English as the King of Samadhi Sutra. So the full name of the sutra here is the Mahayana Sutra, called the King of Samadhis, the revealed equality of the nature of all phenomena. So that second part of the title we don't usually hear, the revealed equality of the nature of all phenomena. So in short, the sutra is mainly showing the equality of the nature of all phenomena. So what is that? Mainly it's that all phenomena are dependent arising and therefore are in the nature of empty, of inherent existence. That's the ultimate nature of all phenomena. And they're all equal in that regard. All phenomena are equal in being empty of inherent existence. And the flip side of that, they're equal in being dependently arising phenomena. But the ultimate nature is the emptiness, empty aspect, empty of existing from their own side, or empty of inherent existence. So it does, mainly teach emptiness. So this translation is by Peter Allen Roberts as part of the 84,000 project. So so let's read through the verses once and just look at a little bit. So the first probably 6 or 8 verses here mainly look at kind of the results of the supreme restraint of the mind. And then the later verses talk about more what the supreme restraint of the mind is. Okay. So let's read. That restraint of the mind through which wise ones attain the supreme state of equanimity and the stainless supreme state of compassion. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. Okay, so the question is, what is the supreme restraint of the mind, and what are the benefits of restraining the mind in this way? Right, so first, because the order is a little bit flipped around. Before answering the question, what is the supreme restraint of the mind, they talk about more of the benefits. So, and each of these verses about the benefits begin with this same line. That restraint of the mind through which the wise ones. So it's through this particular restraint, way of restraining the mind, or way of subduing the mind, or way of focusing the mind, one might say, way of controlling the mind, way of using the mind, you can say. So that, all those things, that restraint of the mind through which wise ones, so those who are wise, practice in this way, and by practicing in this way, they attain the supreme state of equanimity. So remember here what I explained in relation to the title. Equanimity here is largely referring to, well, equanimity can refer to different things in different contexts. So here we have to interpret what it's talking about. It could refer to equanimity in the sense of emotional equanimity, where we don't experience, through the force of attachment, being getting ecstatically excited when things go well, and then through the force of unhappiness, becoming very unhappy and depressed when things don't go well. So having a sort of equanimous state of mind where we experience things with the kind of balance. That's one kind of equanimity. Or another kind of equanimity is where we see all things as being in the same nature, whether it's being in the nature of impermanence, in the nature of suffering, in the nature of emptiness. So the wise ones attain the supreme state of equanimity and the stainless supreme state of compassion, right? So through this way of restraining the mind, the wise ones attain a supreme state of compassion. So that I think we'll come back to. But in the back of your mind, have it already there that the kind of restraint of mind that's being talked about here is having the mind focused on the ultimate nature of things, seeing all things in the nature of emptiness. So how is it that, a big question, which we'll come back to, is how is it that by practicing with our minds in such a way that we're continually mindful of the ultimate nature or the empty nature of all phenomena, that we're endowed with a supreme state of compassion? How are those two related? We'll come back to that. That is what's called the supreme restraint of the mind. Then verse 81 of this chapter. That restraint of the mind through which wise ones attain easeful examination and a mind of pure peace, right? So they examine things, the nature of things with ease, and they attain a state of pure peace, right? So pure peace can easily refer to just ordinary peace of mind, or it can also refer to the supreme peace of nirvana, right? Means a state that's completely beyond suffering. So they attain easeful examination, a mind of pure peace, and detachment through a wealth of qualities. So detachment such that they don't generate desire, greed, lust, and they don't become involved in things in such a way that afflictive emotions arise. So detachment through a wealth of qualities, through having a wealth of qualities. Oops. Okay. This is what is called the supreme restraint of mind. So again, it's that restraint through which these qualities are achieved is called the supreme restraint of mind. In the next two verses, that restraint of the mind through which wise ones do not associate with evil people and those with wrong views, and do not develop a mind of malice or a mind of avarice. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. So again, one effect of this type of way of using the mind, focusing the mind, is that we don't associate with evil people. So what is evil people here? Generally, it means people who have a negative impact on us, which means that it's people with whom when we associate closely with them, then they're a strong condition for afflictive emotions, disturbing emotions to arise in our minds. So if we already have a propensity, for example, to be angry and to slander others, to deprecate others, and then we hang out with people who always are, talking about the bad things they don't like about others, the bad things they see in others, insulting or belittling others, then of course, naturally that will cause us to start to think in the same way and speak in the same way. And we'll ripen our own seeds of anger and malice and malevolence and negative views of other people. So such persons will have, through their being under the power of their own afflictive emotions, and then, speaking with us, sharing their thoughts with us, sharing their behavior with us, then that'll influence us and ripen our own seeds of non-virtuous action. And then it has a negative effect on us, and then we have a negative effect on other people, right? So there's no benefit. So we should not associate with, that's what it's talking about, evil people. Not that from their core they have nothing, there's nothing good about them, but that they engage in wrong behavior and they have wrong views. For example, and here usually wrong views are like views that past and future lives don't exist, that karma doesn't exist, that the Buddha Dharma Sangha don't exist, that whatever we do, it doesn't matter because everything's empty, or everybody dies in the end anyway. Those kind of views. And then, so by this restraint of mind, we do not associate with evil people, and we don't associate with those who have wrong views. And also, we do not develop a mind of malice or a mind of avarice. So avarice is like intense greed. Malice is the wish to harm others. So again, we have to think about how is it that remember, the restraint of mind we're talking about here is the mindfulness of the ultimate nature of all phenomena, mindfulness of emptiness. So how is it that helps us to not develop a mind of malice or a mind of avarice? Well, it's commonly said that, I'm sharing for a second, have a look at you all, that, there are, of the different antidotes, right? Like a direct antidote for malice, one is loving kindness, mind of love. But the meditation on love and loving kindness, it is, because malice, we observe a person or a thing and generate and see only the negative aspects of it. Due to that, we generate sort of aversion to the object, and then have a wish to harm that object or destroy it. Whereas, so you can see how meditation on love is the very opposite. We focus on the very same object, and then we generate a wish that it be well and be happy. So a person, imagine it's a person. It doesn't have to be a person. We can get angry at inanimate things also, but usually it's people. So the mind of love towards a person, then we focus on the person and look at positive qualities about them as helpful, and remember their potential for well-being and happiness, and then generate the wish that may they have well-being and happiness. So you can see how it goes directly against the attitude of anger or malice. And then avarice here is an intense form of desire, greed, attachment. And avarice, so an antidote to avarice, maybe I won't take time to go through all the qualities of it, but is, one is having contentment. Well, one is, you could thinking about the faults of attachment helps to reduce any form of attachment. Another is, instead of thinking only about the attractive qualities of an object, and avarice or attachment, like attachment, it projects onto that which we see as pleasing, the ability to bring us satisfaction from the side of the object. Right? We have that unrealistic expectation that the object we're attached to can bring us ultimate satisfaction, can bring us happiness and well-being. Whereas that's not the case, right? Because if that were the case, then like the cup of coffee that we're attached to, the more we drink it, the more it should bring us satisfaction. But actually that doesn't happen, right? Eventually we just get dehydrated and get a headache and just don't feel well at all. We drink too much coffee. So for example, so so that's a specific, that kind of seeing the negative, looking at the negative aspects of the thing we're attached to is one kind of antidote to attachment, or just looking at how the objects of attachment don't have the power to ultimately satisfy us is another kind of antidote to attachment. But so my point here, actually, which is becoming maybe a little difficult for you to decipher, is that each of the afflictive emotions has specific antidotes for that afflictive emotion that it's like an opposite mind to that afflictive emotion, but they don't apply to one another. So, loving kindness, which is an antidote for attachment, it's not an antidote. loving kindness, which is an antidote to anger and malice, is not an antidote to attachment or to pride or jealousy. And, the inability of an object to bring us satisfaction, which is an antidote, meditation on that is an antidote to attachment or avarice in this case, is not an antidote to anger. Whereas meditation on emptiness is an antidote to all the afflictive emotions. Why is that? Right, that's the main point here. And that's the point. I'll share my screen again to show you that, in fact, what I'm saying is related to what it says here. So that restraint of the mind through which the wise ones, we'll skip to the third line, do not develop a mind of malice or a mind of avarice, is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. So remember here, the supreme restraint of the mind is the mind meditating on emptiness. And through that, we do not develop a mind of malice or avarice. So how is that? That's my whole point, is that because by looking at the ultimate nature of things, then we don't give rise to anger and attachment, because we don't see the qualities of objects, the negative qualities or the positive qualities of objects. We don't see those as existing from their own side, right? Generally, as it says in this verse, often quoted by His Holiness Dalai Lama from, I think it's from the 400 stanzas by Arya Deva. So yeah, sure, it's not coming. But basically like this, there's a 4-step process by which we generate contaminated karma. So the verse says, basically by abandoning contaminated karma, and the source of contaminated karma is afflictive emotions. By abandoning contaminated karma and their source, afflictive emotions, we achieve nirvana. But where do negative karma and afflictive emotions come from? They come from what's here is called nando. Lama Yeshe translated as like superstitious thoughts. Another translation, but the full term that namdo refers to is sumiyijiki namdo, which means incorrectly believing thoughts. So afflictive emotions like anger and attachment, where do they come from? They come from incorrectly believing thoughts, right? So what are those incorrectly believing thoughts? Are like this. When we see an object and we're either averse, we can be averse to it, or we can be neutral towards an object, neither averse nor attracted, or we can be attracted to an object. There's only those 3 possibilities. So when we see an object and say we're averse to it or attracted to it, then we see particular qualities in the object. So when we're averse to an object, we see negative qualities, we focus on those, and then we have a wish to be separated from object. When we're attracted to an object, we see positive qualities, and we wish to be closer to enjoy those, to possess or be closer to those objects. But here the problem is, so this incorrectly believing concepts, where this comes in is when we see the different, either positive qualities or negative qualities in an object, we, through the force of ignorance, grasping at inherent existence, we have the idea that those qualities exist inherently in the object. Has nothing to do with my opinions or the way I perceive things. It's just the way the object actually is. It actually is unpleasant or is unattractive with regard to things we're averse to, or the object from its own side actually does inherently have, these attractive qualities and is attractive, is appealing, and is something, that anyone would want. So this incorrectly believing concepts. So by seeing qualities as inherent inherently possessing attractive or inherently possessing unattractive qualities. On that basis, we generate aversion towards some and attachment towards others. So the previous step to that is just first of all perceiving ourself and other objects as inherently existent, right? So there's this 4-step process where we perceive ourself and everything else in the world as existing from its own side, and then we perceive, objects that we see. So we have this exaggerated sense of distance and separateness between ourself and other things, and then the other objects that we see, we perceive them as attractive or unattractive, and we perceive that those attractive qualities as existing exclusively from the side of the object, and the unattractive qualities as existing exclusively from the side of the object, right? So we exaggerate the object's nature of being attractive or unattractive. And then on that basis, we generate attachment to what appears as attractive and aversion to what appears as unattractive. And then on that basis, then we engage in karmic actions, right? So there's this 4-step process. So from this, try to imagine how, if we continually are aware of ourself and all other things as being interconnected, as being dependently arising, continually changing, and being merely imputed by the mind, in dependence upon this continually changing, infinitely intricate and a complex set of interconnections, intertwining relationships between all phenomena, we impute, I, other, table, I don't know, person, animal. These are all kind of, in a way, they're conventions. They're all kind of fabricated labels that we put on things. None of those things exist from their own side, right? I mean, to say what actually does exist is extremely difficult. It's like a dream. But try to imagine how, if we're continually aware of all phenomena not existing from their own side, not having the slightest atom of existence from their own side, as being like an illusion, like a dream, this infinitely intricate, interconnected web of phenomena, then that would undercut, grasping at some things as being attractive and some as unattractive, this kind of duality, wanting some and not wanting other, right? That's the kind of state of mind you see expressed in, mystical traditions across, many different religious traditions, not only Buddhism. Okay, anyway, so this kind of restraint of mind, that kind of awareness of dependent arising, deep awareness of dependent arising and emptiness, causes us not to develop, protects us from developing malice and avarice. Then the next verse, that restraint of the mind through which wise ones, I have to check my time. Okay, we've have time left. That restraint of the mind through which wise ones do not act with pretense for even an instant. So this kind of arrogance, pretense, and do not act with deception toward the guru. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. So if we have this kind of awareness of dependent arising and emptiness, also, we don't act with pretense, means because we don't grasp at an inherently existent self, then we don't get an inflated sense of I, we don't become egotistical, we're not pretentious. And because we don't engage in non-virtuous actions, we don't have anything to hide, we don't harm others, and we don't act with in a dishonest way, then we do not have any deception towards the guru. Then that restraint of the mind through which wise ones do not develop desire or anger in their minds, and similarly never give rise to ignorance. So this is, desire or attachment, anger, and ignorance are the 3 root afflictive emotions. Of those, the ignorance is the most fundamental. Here, most likely talking about the ignorance grasping at an inherently existent I or inherently existent phenomena. So that the explanation here is similar to the explanation of the verse just 2 before. And then 85, that restraint of the mind through which wise ones in their minds do not forsake enlightenment, and whose superior motivation is never shaken. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. Right? So that restraint of the mind through which wise ones in their minds do not forsake enlightenment, right? So that they don't forsake the aspiration to become a fully enlightened Buddha, a fully enlightened being, and whose superior motivation. So what's the superior motivation? Bodhicitta, right? So their bodhicitta is the superior motivation, which is to become fully enlightened. Why? Not just so I don't suffer anymore. That would be much less lower level of motivation, but by having compassion, unbearable compassion, which sees the suffering of all sentient beings and identifies with that suffering of all sentient beings more than with one's own suffering, such that one feels that the welfare of all sentient beings is more important than one's own welfare, because in the world, as His Holiness always says, there's 7 billion others and only one of me. So the welfare of the 7 billion is much more important than that of the one. And also because all other sentient beings are the same as us in wishing for happiness, wishing to be free from suffering, and they have the same right to well-being and happiness and free from suffering. And just like we wouldn't say, if we just compare our own wish for happiness and wish to be free from suffering with that of one other person, say a sibling or a friend, we wouldn't say that my concern for my own happiness and suffering is somehow less important than that of another. Similarly, if we exchange places, we put ourselves in another person's shoes. We can't say that one other person's wish for happiness and wish to be free from suffering is less important than ours, right? They're all equally important. It's just usually our perspective is skewed because we happen to be conjoined with this particular body and this particular mental continuum. But if we look at it in an objective way, every single sentient beings, whether they're the smallest insect, or they're a huge animal, or they're a spirit, or they're very harmful malevolent kind of person, human being, or other creature, they're a bodhisattva. All of them, they have the same. They have the importance of their wish to have well-being and happiness, and their wish to be free from suffering is exactly the same. So, in that way, also, it makes sense that we should, if we think in a wise way, in an objective way, it makes sense that we're concerned more about the welfare of others than ourselves. And then also when we think about what's the source of our well-being and happiness is other sentient beings. Every moment of enjoyment and happiness we've ever experienced, from mundane things like a nice a chocolate truffle, to super mundane things like the most sublime bliss we've ever had in the course of a Dharma teaching or meditation, or experiencing a great work of art or music or whatever, a deep insight, all comes about in dependence upon other sentient beings, right? Without other sentient beings, countless other sentient beings, we couldn't have experienced any of those pleasures that we've ever experienced in this life or countless previous lives in samsara. So for that reason also, we should cherish the welfare of all sentient beings. So I better come back to this verse now because I'm digressing. So what does this have to do with the supreme restraint of the mind, awareness of emptiness? Well, yeah, it's a little difficult to explain this, but I'll just briefly say in a word. Why is it even possible for us to become enlightened, right? I was just talking about there in that little digression about what is the superior motivation that is never shaken. So why is it that this bodhicitta motivation, the wish to become enlightened in order to benefit all sentient beings would be never shaken if we have awareness of emptiness. Basically, it's because the fact that all sentient beings are empty of inherent existence is which establishes the possibility of all sentient beings becoming fully enlightened. Right. So if we look at one's own, continuum, one's own self as a person, is it possible for me? We can each ask ourselves, right? Is it possible for me to become enlightened? We should ask ourselves, right? Well, it kind of hinges on two things. One is all the garbage that we see in us, as part of ourselves, all the garbage in our minds, all the terrible things we've done, all the bad karma we've created, all the bad habits we have, so that, the triggers that we have, so that people act like this or talk like this, and it just really sets us off. Is it possible to purify all that stuff? Is it possible to change all that stuff, to get rid of all that bad stuff, right? If it's not, then there's no way we're going to ever become enlightened, right? Impossible. So when we look at all the garbage that's part of us, is it possible to purify all that, to totally eliminate it, to clean it away without the slightest trace? Yes. Why? Because none of that inherently exists. It all is adventitiously arising. It all has arisen in dependence upon adventitious, temporary causes and conditions, and none of that is of the nature of our mind, right, or of the nature of us as a person. If any of that garbage stuff was of the nature of the mind, then it should be continually present whenever a mind is present. Just as heat is always present whenever fire is present. Just as a dampness, wetness, and liquidity is always present when water is present. Just as illumination is always present when light is present. You look at what does it mean to be the nature of something. It's like when wood, you think about the nature of wood. One of the characteristics of wood is that it's solid, right? You can't have liquid wood. There might be products called that, but they're not really wood, right? So when we look at the nature of our mind, there's a conventional nature and then the ultimate nature of the mind. The conventional nature is the mind is merely that which is clear and knowing, which, one good way to think about that is it's like a mirror. Just as a mirror, it can, a mirror on the wall, it can reflect anything that comes in front of it, but none of the images that are reflected in the mirror are of the nature of the mirror. If they were, then whenever you look in the mirror, you would see that reflection. So if you hold an apple in front of the mirror, then you look in the mirror, you see, and there's light, you see the reflection of an apple. So that apple is present, that reflection of the apple is present in the mirror at that time. Present in the mirror, what does that really mean? You can analyze, but maybe in a different session after midnight. But that reflection of the apple in the mirror, it's present at that time due to different causes and conditions. There's the presence of the mirror, there's the apple, and there's light. And then there's your eyes, which are perceiving the reflection. All those are present, right? So, but that reflection, if it was of the nature of the mirror, then, even you take the apple away and another time you look in the mirror, you should still see the reflection of the apple. But you don't, right? So there's no reflection, anything that has a physical form can be reflected in the mirror, but none of those reflections are of the nature of the mirror. Similarly, any object that exists can appear to our minds. But none of those objects and none of the appearances of any of those objects are of the nature of our mind. Similarly, any emotions are objects. Emotions are objects which we both look at, as objects, as observers of an emotion. We can observe our own emotions, but they're also like qualities of mind, states of mind that we generate. But it may be so to look at how different afflictive emotions, especially, are not of the nature of the mind. Maybe it's more helpful to use a different analogy. Think about a lake or the ocean. The surface of the water. What if if all that's present is water, right? So there's the lake bed or the seabed holding, this is the container, and then there's water sitting in that container. And imagine there's nothing else affecting the water. There's no ships, there's no wind, especially, no birds, no earthquakes or anything, nothing to disturb the water. What will the water do? It'll naturally settle down and become just glassy, smooth. The surface will become glassy and smooth. The water will be completely unmoving and totally peaceful, at peace. And the surface will become also very reflective. It'll very clearly reflect whatever light falls on the surface. Similarly, our mind is of a similar nature. This is Buddhist assertion, right? So this is all about the conventional nature of the mind. Is that our mind, if it's undisturbed by other causes and conditions, it naturally will revert to a state of peace. But afflictive emotions, by definition, are that which disturbs the peace of the mind, right? So and remember what I was saying before, afflictive emotions arise through this 3 or 4-step process where, first there's fundamental ignorance, grasping at inherent existence of I and others, and that creates this duality. Then in others, we see things as attractive, unattractive, and we think they are like that from their own side. It has nothing to do with our perception or our habituation. It's just they really are like that. And then we become attached to, we desire things that appear as attractive, and we become averse to and repulsed by things that we achieve, things that we perceive as unattractive. So all that whole process from ignorance on up is all disturbing the peace of the mind, right? So, okay, so to get back to emptiness and the possibility of enlightenment, and then the conventional of the nature of the mind, in short, is that none of those disturbing factors are of the nature of the mind. They're all like reflections in the mirror. Sometimes they're present and sometimes they're not. We can see how, we can check in our own experience. Is there any afflictive emotion which is always present whenever my mind is present? No, they all come and go. Then the other thing is, so my fundamental question here was then, is all the garbage that is part of us, is it possible to purify all that? And the other, so one way to look at it is no, because it's not of the conventional nature of the mind. Another way to look at it is no, because all of it is empty of inherent existence. When you search for, any of that garbage that's part of us, you zoom. It's like you're zooming in to a picture. Say you see a flower in a picture, and you want to see it, more clearly, more close up. You zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, but at a certain point, it becomes less and less clear, and you just start to see granular, pixels. You start to see the individual pixels of the image, and the image becomes more and more granular, and you totally lose sight of the object you were trying to see more clearly. So according to the consequentialist view of the middle way, the ultimate, view, what's asserted to be the ultimate view of reality in all 4 schools of Tibetan Buddhism, is that any object that exists, when you search for that object, when you search for the object which is imputed by words and by concepts, you can't find it. When you zoom in to look for the precise object, what you end up finding is a web of interdependently arising relationships between different things, the basis of imputation for the object, right? And you can't find the object. Then you look, okay, well, maybe the basis of imputation itself exists. You zoom in on that, but then you also can't find that. So, so how does that relate to all the garbage that, is part of our persona being able to be purified? Is, well, basically none of it has a concrete existence from its own side. Just like everything else that exists, all the negative aspects that are part of us are adventitiously arising phenomena that have arisen through the force of a set of infinite cause and conditions, which means they're changeable. They're changing moment by moment. Whatever seeds of anger we have, yes, we might have seeds of anger within us, and it's true that when certain causes and conditions come together, we get angry. But it's just like seeds in the forest. Like they don't have to be there. We can do something to eliminate them. We can reduce the causes and conditions that give rise to those. And I mean, luckily, then here we come back to ignorance. The fundamental cause of all these afflictive emotions in our mind is ignorance, right? Is this fundamental misapprehension of the way things exist, this exaggeration of the independent nature of things, of the concrete, isolated separateness of things. And because of that, this is really the strongest reason, is because all the garbage that's part of us as a person all arises from this one fundamental misconception, this one fundamental kind of ignorance. So we can eliminate that ultimate cause of all of samsara, ultimate cause of all, ultimate in the sense of the final, the most fundamental cause of all suffering. Then we can purify all of the garbage that's part of us. So now back to the verse. So if we can clearly see that, if we have awareness of dependent arising and emptiness, then that gives us an unshakable understanding that yes, it's possible to purify all of the afflictive emotions, all of the negative karma, all of the contaminated positive karma, even all of the attachment, jealousy, arrogance, and pride, all of the hatred, all of the violence. It's possible to eliminate the most fundamental causes of all of that, and therefore it's possible also to generate, infinite wisdom, infinite compassion, infinite patience, infinite kindness and generosity. And so it's only through the view of emptiness, actually, that we can come to understand that enlightenment is possible. It's only through generating, unshakable knowledge, unshakable kind of a valid cognizer, unshakable understanding that enlightenment is possible, that the aspiration for that enlightenment becomes also unshakable, something that we will never forsake, right? The real reason we probably for most people, the reason, we probably all had the experience from anyone who's been in Buddhism, especially Mahayana Buddhism or the Sanskrit tradition of Buddhism for a while, probably has had the experience of, first hearing about, the qualities of Buddhas, Lamas and Bodhicitta and, Pure Lands and Bodhisattvas, and becoming, really, really kind of elated to hear about such wonderful beings, such wonderful qualities, such wonderful, amazing possibilities, and then kind of jumping in, full in, and then realizing after some years that, it's not easy to change. And a lot of things that we had a very idealistic idea about, at one point, we kind of get a more realistic idea about later. And and there's a danger that we lose our aspiration to achieve this incredible high, pure, ideal, the ideal of enlightenment. And one of the probably main reasons that a person would give up the aspiration to achieve enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings is because they feel like, I can't do it. It's impossible. I'm never going to be able to do that. And the reason we feel that largely is because we don't really have a clear understanding why actually it is possible, right? So, like on the when talk about the Bodhisattva Path, right? There's the 5 paths of the Bodhisattva Path: the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning, which I won't go into all of them here, but for you, those of you who know something about. On the path of, so the mark of entering the path of accumulation, the first of the 5 paths, is when one generates uncontrived bodhicitta. That means that day and night, spontaneously and continuously, the aspiration to achieve full enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings arises in one's mind. But there are some bodhisattvas who, when they first generate uncontrived bodhicitta, they generate it and they're on, it's called this, the small path. The path of accumulation has 3 levels: the small, middling, and great. So some bodhisattvas can fall back from the small. When you're on the small path of accumulation, you can fall back, which means you can give up bodhicitta. So there's some bodhisattvas that generate uncontrived bodhicitta, but then they lose it and they fall out of the path, out of the bodhisattva path, and then they enter the Hinayana path. Why is that? It's because they haven't realized emptiness, right? Once a bodhisattva realizes emptiness, generates a valid perception of emptiness, then they'll never lose their bodhicitta, right? So that's, I can't go into that more here, but that's just another illustration of this relationship between, and the importance of this relationship between the mind realizing emptiness, therefore realizing the possibility of purifying all causes of suffering, the afflictive emotions and all karma, and the possibility of then completely purifying our minds and achieving full enlightenment, not only ourselves, but the same is true for all sentient beings. So once you realize, emptiness and combine that realization with the aspiration to achieve full enlightenment, bodhicitta, then it's unshakable, right? And you'll never forsake it, as it says here. In their minds, they do not forsake enlightenment, and those whose superior motivation is never shaken. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. So I need to go a little more quickly. We're going to finish and read it all again and meditate. That restraint of the mind through which wise ones do not keep with any of the other numerous faults of the mind that there may be, that is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. So just remember how awareness of dependent arising and emptiness helps to undercut all of the other afflictive emotions, because it undercuts the fundamental ignorance, which is the root of all the afflictive emotions. And then they understand the mind as, okay, so here we start the description of what is this supreme restraint of the mind that we're talking about, right? Okay, so here. So remember in the previous verses, the first line was always that restraint of the mind through which the wise ones, right? So wise people, through this restraint of the mind, they accomplish this and this and this and this, talking about all the benefits, all the good results. So here it begins with they understand. So this is the wise ones. What is their restraint of mind? They understand this, right? So there's a few verses going to talk about what this supreme restraint of the mind is. They understand the mind as being like an illusion, like a dream, and similarly like a mirage, always having the characteristic of a hallucination. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. So whenever we hear these analogies in Buddhism, being like a dream, like an illusion, like a mirage, like a hallucination, it's almost always talking about emptiness or selflessness in some way, right? According to, there's the 4 schools, Vaibhashika, Sutra, Chittamatra, and Madhyamaka. They all use these analogies, these illustrations. So what are fundamentally the same about these illusion, a dream, a mirage, a hallucination, is that in any of those cases, sorry, my mouse is acting up. in any of those cases, the way things appear and the way they actually exist is different, right? It's discordant. So think about a dream. In a dream, we're laying in bed, we fall into a deep sleep, and then from within that we rise into a dream. We don't recognize the dream as a dream. We just are ordinarily dreaming. Then, we see, dream appearances, like, I don't know. I was dreaming the other day that one of my teeth fell out. So in a dream, you see a tooth and you think it's a real tooth. It falls out and you think it really fell out. You see a horse, you think it's a real horse. You see a cliff and you fall off the cliff and you really think you're falling, right? So in a dream, things appear as real, but actually it's just a dream cliff that you fell over. It's just, you're just flying over a dream landscape. It's just a dream tooth that fell out. It's not a real tooth. If you knew that at the time, if you knew it was just a dream things at the time of the dream, it wouldn't have any emotional impact on you, because it should be just like watching a movie. Even when you're watching a movie, like a horror movie, if you can keep in mind strongly that this is just a movie, it's just made up, it's just actors on a screen, doesn't affect you that much. But if you let go of that and just kind of let yourself fall into the imaginary world of the movie or the novel, then you really get scared, right? So like that. So like in a dream, the way things appear, they appear as real, but they're actually not real. In an illusion, things appear, these illusory appearances appear as being things that they're actually not. In a mirage, the shimmering on the surface of the sand and the heat of the day, it appears like, has this reflective quality, like it's water in the distance, but it's not, right? And a hallucination, whether it's auditory or visual hallucination, you hear things, it sounds like, there's some kind of, I don't know, creature in the closet scratching on the back of the closet door about to come out and, pounce on you in bed. But it's not. It's just, the wind blowing on the branches of the trees or whatever. So, well, that's actually probably not a hallucination, just imagination. But hallucination, yeah, you see things or hear things that seem to be one thing, but they're not that kind of thing. So similarly in when we talk about the ultimate nature of things, the way we perceive everything is totally mistaken. The way, according to the Madhyamaka school, especially the consequentialist middle way school, then the way everything appears to us, to our eyes, to our ears, the way smells appear to our nose, the way tastes appear to our tongue, the way, any object appears to our thought consciousness, they all appear as existing from their own side. They don't exist in that way, even in the slightest atom. So, yeah, learning to be mindful of that. Okay. So now the next verse. They understand happiness. So the wise ones again, they understand happiness to be like a dream. So here, and similarly impermanent, empty and transient. So how do they understand happiness? Happiness is just a representation for all phenomena, to be like a dream. In the previous verse, it said the mind, right? So, but this is important. They understand the mind as being like an illusion. So here, the supreme restraint of the mind is not just looking at all phenomena as being like an illusion, meaning although they appear as existing from their own side, by their own power, separate from imputation by the mind, they don't exist in that way at all, but especially looking at our own mind as being like an illusion. So how does our own mind appear to us? We have to check. But what it's saying here is the way our mind appears to us and the way it actually exists are completely different. Our mind appears to us as existing from its own side, as existing independently of being imputed upon its basis of imputation. As it appears as existing not as imputed upon a set of parts. But actually, the way it exists is as something that's merely imputed on the basis of imputation. It's merely imputed upon a collection of parts, none of which are the mind. So similarly, as our mind, we should look at like an illusion, like a dream, like a hallucination, or like a mirage. Wise ones also understand happiness and unhappiness, attachment, anger, everything to be like a dream. Also understand those things to be impermanent, changing moment by moment. Empty here means empty of an inherently existing self. And also they see those things as being transient, not lasting. Wise ones understand the mind in that way. So again, the mind, looking at the nature of the mind, the ultimate nature of the mind. Wise ones understand the mind in that way. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. So we can look at our mind as impermanent. Our mind as not having an inherently existent possessor. There's no one who possesses the mind who exists from their own side also. And then the next verse, they understand the mind to be without a soul. So here soul means, is probably a translation for da, means self. They understand the mind to be without a self, or an inherently existent self, and without being. So they understand the mind to be without a soul. Without being here means an inherent being from its own side, and arising from conditions, like a world torch's circle of fire. So here, yeah, I'm running out of time quickly, but so imagine person you see, like circus performers or street performers at night, have a short piece of rope, like a meter long length of the rope. On the end of it, they have a torch with fire, it's burning, and then they twirl it around very quickly. What do you see at night? You don't see a rope, with one, lump of fire on the end twirling around. What you see is just a continual circle of fire if they twirl it fast enough. But actually, it's not a circle of fire, right? I mean, there is no circle of fire. When you go to look for the circle, all you find, you get hit, your finger gets hit by this thing twirling around. There's this individual thing going around very quickly, producing the appearance of a solid circle of fire. But there is no solid circle of fire. It's an illusion. So like that, but that appearance of the solid circle of fire, it arises from a set of causes and conditions. The performer, the rope, the torch, the substance of stuff that was burning, the act of lighting it, with a match or a lighter or whatever, and then the act of whirling it around. All these different whirling it around, all these different conditions come together to produce this appearance of something existing in a way that it actually doesn't. So again, the wise ones, they understand the mind to be without a soul, without being, and arising from conditions, like a world torch's circle of fire, not coming from anywhere, not going anywhere. So where does your mind come from? Where does it go to? That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. And then the last two verses, they never objectify the mind at all, right? So the wise ones, when they observe their own mind, they never objectify it. It means they never grasp at it as being, as existing from its own side. Rather, they always are mindful of their own mind as being, a continually arising, transforming, impermanent. Impermanent in the sense that it's momentarily disintegrating. It's continually becoming not what it was in the immediately preceding moment. It's continually changing. And also, so they never objectify it. Another way they never objectify it is they never fall into the mistaken idea that there actually is this one coherent thing, the mind, my mind, existing from its own side, right? When we look for your own mind, try to find your own mind, all we find is a set of different phenomena, different perceptions, some memories of the past, thoughts about the future, feelings about the present, perceptions of heat or cold, perceptions of light, darkness, thought of different words, different images, memories come to mind. There's all these different conscious experiences that we have. They're continually arising and continually passing away without pausing for a moment, like a flowing stream. And yet when we talk about mind, it's referring to all of those. But where is my mind? Like do I have a mind? Yes, we have a mind. But and if someone asks, well, how many minds do you have? We'd probably say we just have one mind. But then where is that mind? Like, what is it? It's like we're just labeling this thing on this whole set of continually changing group of phenomena. There isn't like one. There's no, but in that way we objectify. Objectify here means we think there is really just this one thing, my mind. But if we search and analyze, we can't find that. So the wise ones here, they never objectify the mind at all and are without conceptualization or pride. So here means false conceptualization. And because of that, they're without arrogant pride. My mind is so great. They do not fixate upon, they do not fixate upon it or become attached to it. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. They understand the ultimate truth to be like a dream, and nirvana to be the same as a dream. Wise ones understand the mind in that way. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. Okay, so that's the first time reading through. So I think I'll go ahead and just read through again. And then we'll take some time to meditate on, and you can, I'm kind of doing this to encourage you when you read different sutras by the Buddha to make some time to meditate on them. There's a big difference between just reading through and intellectually thinking about something. There's a big one. There's one we can just read through and not really think about, which is minimally beneficial. Two, we can read through and think about, which is much more beneficial. But there's a big difference to just stop, for a few moments and think about what is being said in our own way, which is much more beneficial. So I'm trying to encourage you to do to do the last, read, contemplate, and meditate. But before we read through again, I just want to give you some just basic outline about how, because I'm not going to give meditation instruction after we read through. I'll just stop and for a few moments, and we each try to meditate in our own way. And you're welcome to use, actually I should, I'm going to upload now. Sorry, don't do that. I'll upload a Word document to the chat so you can look at the verses, whatever verse you want. I think I can do. Let's see. I'm going to try now. But so while I'm doing that, I can't see you. See, here I can. Gosh, and this is going to work. Anyway, yeah. Ideally, you can look at whatever verses you want without requiring. That's not going to work. Okay, let's try a different way. Your computer. I'll try to upload from my computer. 1 second, please. Where is it? So I'm trying to make it so you can look at whatever verses you want and meditate on those, and don't have to rely on what I'm showing. Okay, done. It's in the chat now. So there's a Word document in the chat of these verses. Just show it. You can download it if you want. Okay, but basically what I suggest the way you meditate is, there's 3 different ways. One way is to look at the conventional nature of the mind. Just try to recognize what is your mind? What is the conventional nature of the mind? And in Buddhism, we give the definition, that which is clear and knowing, and try to just look at, identify, and be fully aware of the nature of your mind itself. Then another way is, and you can progress through these, is to look at how the mind is impermanent. How it is continually, each moment, it's arising through sets of causes and conditions, and each moment it's changing and passing away in the sense that it's becoming not what it was before in the preceding moment. So another way is to look at the impermanent nature of the mind, how it's continually changing. And then a third way, the most difficult, is to look at the ultimate nature of the mind, which is that it is merely imputed by words and concepts. And when we search for, the mind, how we cannot find, what we find is its basis of imputation, a set of parts or a set of causes and conditions upon which we label mind, but which themselves are not the thing that is labeled, right? They're not the mind that is labeled upon this. And therefore, because the mind is an interdependently arising phenomena, arising in dependence upon parts, in dependence upon causes and conditions, and especially in dependence upon labeling mind upon this collection of phenomena, therefore it's empty of inherent existence. So that one's a little difficult, but if you like, you can try. So we'll, again, just read through these verses once more and then meditate for a little while. That restraint of the mind through which wise ones attain the supreme state of equanimity and the stainless supreme state of compassion. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. That restraint of the mind through which wise ones attain easeful examination and a mind of pure peace and detachment through a wealth of qualities. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. That restraint of the mind through which wise ones do not associate with evil people and those with wrong views, and do not develop a mind of malice or a mind of avarice. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. That restraint of the mind through which wise ones do not act with pretense for even an instant, and do not act with deception toward the guru. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. That restraint of the mind through which wise ones do not develop desire or anger in their minds, and similarly never give rise to ignorance. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. That restraint of the mind through which wise ones in their minds do not forsake enlightenment, and whose superior motivation is never shaken. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. That restraint of the mind through which wise ones do not keep with any of the other numerous faults of the mind that there may be. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. They understand the mind as being like an illusion, like a dream, and similarly like a mirage, always having the characteristic of a hallucination. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. They never objectify. They understand happiness to be like a dream, and similarly impermanent, empty, and transient. Wise ones understand the mind in that way. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. They understand the mind to be without a soul, without being, and arising from conditions like a world torch's circle of fire, not coming from anywhere nor going anywhere. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. They never objectify the mind at all and are without conceptualization or pride. They do not fixate upon it or become attached to it. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. They understand the ultimate truth to be like a dream, and nirvana to be the same as a dream. Wise ones understand the mind in that way. That is what is called the supreme restraint of the mind. So now let's meditate as you like for about 8 minutes. Okay, so let's conclude our meditation there. And yeah, so the last thing is to dedicate. I hope you're all enjoying the meditation such that you feel like you want to do this more. That would be good. That would be success. I certainly did. So yeah, so thank you all for this opportunity. Let's yeah, bring to mind all the merit we've created through this session by beginning with the virtuous motivation. So rejoice in one's own merit and the merit of all the others who participated in the session and made this possible. And then reading and contemplating, discussing some of the words of the Buddha from the King of Samadhi Sutra, or the King of Concentration Sutra. And then we can rejoice in all the merits created by all other sentient beings, especially on this during these days of miracles, in the other sessions sponsored by Tushita, and in general by all our Buddhist brothers and sisters, and in general by all sentient beings throughout the world, in the past, present, and future, especially all the merits created by all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and our own teachers. We can rejoice. Especially in all the deeds of Shakyamuni Buddha, who has inspired so many, countless people from 2,500 years ago until today. So all this merit gathered together, then we dedicate that His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche and all of our gurus' lives are long and stable, that all of our actions are only pleasing to the guru, and that we only create causes to continually receive his teachings and advice and instruction and guidance from our teachers in this and all future lives. And especially the Buddha Dharma, the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha in this fortunate eon may continue to survive for a long time and spread, bringing countless benefit to all sentient beings. And within that, especially all the monks and nuns keep their pratimoksha vows, and all sentient beings, all those who have bodhisattva vows, tantric vows, may they all be able to keep their vows and samadhis purely. And then especially may all the centers of FPMT flourish, especially Tushita. And all the centers in Tushita have all the conducive conditions to be able to continue offering all the things they offer, courses and retreats and pujas and holy objects and so forth for the welfare of all sentient beings. And then bring to mind any prayers especially dedications you'd like to make for yourself or for family, friends, loved ones. And may all of those your prayers be fulfilled in accordance with your virtuous aspirations. And especially may there be peace in Ukraine, and the war there quickly come to an end and a peaceful resolution be found, as well as all other countries in the world where there's violent conflict. May that come to an end, especially Syria and Afghanistan and so forth. And then may all natural disasters cease. May all sentient beings be free from hunger, thirst, disease. May all those who have recently died quickly take precious human rebirths or rebirth on a pure land. Especially this Gelo, Jantapunso, was associated with Tushita. May he quickly recover from his stroke. And in short, may all sentient beings be free from every form of suffering and have every state of happiness and well-being, and the causes of those up to full enlightenment. Okay. Thank you all for joining, and hope you have the rest of auspicious days of miracles, and we meet again sometime.
Thank you so much, Venerable Letsok, for the inspiring session. And Venerable Letsok, I think maybe your internet wasn't strong enough. It didn't upload on the chat. So if you could send the verses to me, and we put it in a resource folder. Remember, everybody, when we sent you the confirmation mail, there was not only the Zoom link and another link to the recordings, but also a link to a resource folder. So we can put documents like that in there, and then they're really easy available. I think it's easier than putting them on the website or here. I think it might have been too big to upload. That's our guess.
Okay.
Humble guess.
Okay, yeah, I'll send it to you, Kunpan.
Cool. Thank you so much, Ven.Legtsok. And we hope we see you very, very soon again at Tushita, not only online, but in person. Please, let's return to India very soon. Enjoy your time in Italy, but then let's return to India, and we hope we can see you very soon. Hopefully, maybe for a basic program or something similar. And thank you so much, Venerable Ven.Legtsok. And tomorrow morning, we have another session with Venerable Namjong, who is actually a housemate of Venerable Legtsok. And at 12 o'clock Indian time, tomorrow again, we continue the Golden Light Sutra reading, which we are, continuing until probably Sunday, so we can read the whole sutra. And then at 2 o'clock, so tomorrow we have 3 events. 12 o'clock, Golden Light Sutra reading. 2 o'clock, we are streaming on Facebook, The Cave in the Snow, about Jitsuma Tenzin Palmo, about her life. It's a very inspiring movie, so please join our Facebook at 2 o'clock. And at 4 o'clock, we have the question and answer with Jitsuma Tenzin Palmo. Many of you have sent questions already, so I try to put them all together, and then we can enjoy Jitsuma at 4 o'clock. So please join us for that. And we have many, many more events coming up the next 8 days of the Days of Miracles. Thank you so much. Thank you, Venerable Legtsok. Have a good night in India, a good evening in Europe, and a good day in the Americas. And see you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Venerable Sayana. Ciao. Good night. See you soon.